Her breath touched the back of my neck, and I didn't move. I should have. But I didn't. I remember the way it felt. Not just the warmth of it, but the pause that came after. Like she was waiting. Like she wanted to see if I'd pull away. But I didn't. I couldn't. I tell myself it was the wine, or the silence between us, or maybe the years of things left unsaid finally catching up to us in one slow, quiet moment. But the truth is I didn't move because something inside me didn't want to. They say family is sacred. That blood is a boundary. A line you don't cross, even in your thoughts. But what if it's not that simple? What if the only one who ever truly saw you is the one you're not supposed to touch? What if the line isn't where we think it is? This isn't the kind of story you tell over coffee with friends. It's not something you confess at a dinner table or in therapy in the first session. This is the kind of story that lives in the quietest part of your chest. The part that aches when no one's looking. But I'm going to tell you. Because maybe you've been there or somewhere close. And if you have, I want you to know you're not crazy. You're not alone. You're human. And sometimes, being human means wanting the wrong person for the right reasons. So, if you're new here, this is Olivia Touching Tales. We tell the kind of stories people are too scared to say out loud. The ones that live in shadows, but deserve the light. Like, subscribe, and let yourself fall into this with me. Because what happened between me and my sister changed everything. And I've never been the same since. It was raining that weekend. Not the kind of rain that scares you, not loud or angry. Just soft, steady, like the world had finally decided to exhale. Everything felt slower. Still. The kind of rain that makes you want to stay in your pajamas and never open the door. She was already on the couch when I came down, legs tucked under a blanket, hair pulled into that lazy bun she always wore when she didn't care to impress anyone. Or maybe when she knew she already did. There was a black and white movie playing. Something old and romantic. The kind where people fall in love with a look across the room and everything is said without words. I barely watched it. My eyes kept drifting to her. She patted the space beside her, and I didn't hesitate. I never did with her. There's always been a kind of gravity between us. A silent understanding. Like we were tuned to the same frequency from the start. I sat. Clothes not touching, not yet, but close enough to feel her heat. She handed me a mug of tea, steaming and sweet, but neither of us took a sip. It just sat there in our hands, cooling slowly, forgotten. Like a prop in a scene we weren't really paying attention to. She laughed at something in the movie, soft, low, and the sound of it went straight through me. It wasn't the laugh itself. It was how close it was. How much it felt like it was just for me. Her thigh brushed mine beneath the blanket. She didn't move it. Neither did I. I told myself it was innocent. That it didn't mean anything. That we were sisters, and sisters sit close, and maybe that's all it was. But I knew better. Somewhere deep, quiet, in that part of me I'd been ignoring for years, I knew better. Because when she reached for my hand, not fast, not with purpose, just a small, casual gesture, she didn't let go. Her fingers stayed there. Lightly. Lingering. Like she needed to know I was real. Or maybe she needed to remind me that she was. And I didn't pull away. I should have. I know that. I should have said something. Made a joke. Shifted. Created space. But instead, I leaned in. Not all the way, not yet. Just enough to breathe her in. Lavender. That was the smell. She always wore it. Her sweatshirts smelled like it. Her skin. Even her hair. Lavender and something warmer. Something like home. And God, I missed feeling at home. Not in a place. Not in a house or a routine or a relationship. But in a person. I hadn't felt that in so long. Not with my husband. Not even with myself. It was like I'd forgotten what it was like to just be with someone and not feel like I had to perform. But with her I didn't have to be strong. Or pretty. Or perfect. I could just be. We didn't talk much that day. We didn't need to. There was this silence between us that felt full. Like it wasn't empty at all, just dense with everything we weren't saying. Every now and then, she'd shift slightly, and her leg would press more firmly against mine. And every time, I'd feel it in places I didn't know could still feel that way. My whole body felt awake, but not in a way that was loud or obvious. It wasn't lust, not really. It was something more dangerous than that. It was longing, the kind that builds slowly, quietly, over years. Layer after layer until one day it's just there. Heavy. Unavoidable. I kept telling myself it was just comfort. That I was just cold. That we were just close because we always had been. But something had changed. Or maybe something had always been there, and we were just finally letting ourselves notice. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Her hair brushed my collarbone. I felt her breath against my skin again. I didn't move. And this time, I didn't even pretend I wanted to. There was a part of me that was hungry for something I couldn't name. Something I didn't even know how to ask for. And there she was, inches away, offering me everything I hadn't even admitted I needed. No words. Just warmth. Just presence. Just her body beside mine, like it belonged there. Like I belonged there. And in that moment, I let myself believe it. I let myself believe that it was okay to be held, to be seen, to be wanted, even if it was by the one person I was never supposed to feel that way about. Because the truth is, I wasn't thinking about what was right. I was thinking about how long I'd felt alone, even in rooms full of people. I was thinking about how her hand in mine felt more honest than any conversation I'd had in months. I was thinking about the way her silence said more than anyone else's words ever did. And I was thinking, maybe this isn't wrong. Maybe it's just finally real. And God help me, I didn't want it to stop. And that's where everything started to change. He tries. I won't pretend he doesn't. Some nights, he'll make dinner, light the candles, put his phone away and ask me about my day, like he's trying to pull something real out of me. Like maybe if he asks the question the right way, I'll give him the version of me he used to know. But I don't even know where that version lives anymore. Sometimes we'll go out nice places, warm lights, soft jazz playing overhead. We sit across from each other with wine in our hands and smile like people who remember how to love each other, even if they're not sure where it went. He touches me politely. His hand on my knee under the table. His palm on my back when we walk through a door. He kisses my cheek when we get home. And sometimes, yes, we go further. He tries to be gentle, focused. He whispers my name like he's saying a prayer, slow, careful, even reverent. But it's not her name. It's not me he's touching. It's a memory. A muscle memory. He knows where to go, how to move, what I used to like. But it feels like choreography. Like a dance he practiced too many times. She doesn't do that. She doesn't follow steps. She listens. With her eyes. With her skin. With her stillness. She touches me like I'm a story she's reading for the first time, like she's savoring every line, every pause, every hidden layer. Not just learning me, discovering me. And I don't know if I ever even wanted to be learned. I think I wanted to be found. I wanted someone to look at me and see past the makeup, the laundry, the titles, the rings, the years. I wanted someone to see the wild thing, still flickering under all this calm I carry. The part of me I put away to be good, to be safe, to be someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's role. I wanted to be seen not just as a woman, but as something untamed, something aching and alive and waiting in the dark to be pulled into the light. And somehow she saw it. She didn't mean to. I know that. She didn't come into my life to steal me from it. She was just there, always there. And something in me leaned toward her like a flower toward the sun. Slowly at first. Then all at once. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't ask me to explain why I felt hollow, or why I cried in the shower some mornings, or why I smiled with my mouth but not with my eyes. She just sat beside me, held my hand too long, let her thigh rest against mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. And she saw me. The things I never said out loud, she heard them anyway. And maybe that's what scared me the most. Not that she touched me, but that she understood me before she ever did. She woke something in me. A craving. Not just for skin. Not just for heat. But for honesty. For a love that didn't ask me to shrink. For a connection that didn't come with conditions. For a presence so close it made everything else feel like a distant echo. And I let her. I let her wake it. I let her stir it. I let her in. I didn't stop her. I didn't want to. Because every time I went back to my husband, I felt it more. The divide. The ache. He'd kiss me and I'd wonder what it would feel like if she did. He'd say he missed me and I'd wonder if he even knew where I'd gone. He'd hold me and I'd feel invisible. And that's the thing, no one talks about how lonely it feels to be touched by someone who doesn't see you. You can be kissed every day and still starve. And I was starving. For something raw. Something true. Something that didn't need to be labeled or understood or justified. Just felt. Real. And there she was. On the couch. In the kitchen. In the hallway. Moving through my life like a question I couldn't answer. And every time our fingers brushed, every time our eyes met too long, every time her voice dropped low and she whispered something only I was meant to hear. I let it happen. I didn't run. I didn't ask her to stop. I didn't tell her it was wrong. Because it didn't feel wrong. It felt inevitable. Like the tide coming in. Like something I'd been waiting for, without even knowing I was waiting. And when she touched my wrist that night in the hallway, just a touch, just her fingertips on my skin, I felt the air leave my body. Not because it was shocking. But because it wasn't. It felt like a memory I hadn't lived yet. And deep down I knew this wasn't the end of it. It was only the beginning. It happened late. The house was still. That kind of quiet that feels sacred, like the walls are listening. I couldn't sleep. I'd crept down for tea I knew I wouldn't drink. She was already there sitting cross-legged on the couch in that same oversized hoodie, the one that always smelled like lavender and something softer, like skin after rain. The light above her flickered gold across her cheekbones, casting long shadows behind her eyes. She didn't look at me right away, but I felt her. That presence again. Like gravity shifting toward her. Like my own body was betraying me, or maybe finally telling the truth. I sat beside her, quietly. Close, but not touching. And then she said it. Soft, like it had been living inside her for years. Have you ever felt like the person you were supposed to love just didn't see you? I didn't speak right away. I think my breath caught. Not because of the question itself, but because of how gently she asked it. Like she wasn't accusing. Like she wasn't fishing. Just naming something sacred and broken at the same time. I stared at the steam rising from my mug, curling like smoke from a quiet burn. And then, barely above a whisper, I said, "Every day." She nodded like she already knew. And maybe she did. Maybe she'd been watching me shrink for longer than I realized. Watching me smile through silence. Watching me sit at dinner tables and disappear. And then she dared more. She turned to me fully this time, her voice low, almost shaking. "Would it be so wrong," she said, "if I told you I've always wanted to protect you?" I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw it. Not desire. Not confusion. But devotion. A kind of quiet, aching love that doesn't beg or boast. It just is. She went on, barely breathing. Even from him. Even from the life you built because you thought you were supposed to. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. My skin buzzed. My knees were cold, but my chest burned. What was this? What were we standing in? I was someone's wife. She was my sister. But nothing about this felt twisted. It felt tender. Tragic. True. My whole body was trembling, but I wasn't afraid. I was seen. Held by her gaze before her hands ever touched me. She didn't ask me to choose. She didn't push. She just waited there, in that quiet, for my truth to rise. And something inside me cracked open. Maybe it had been waiting. For years. For someone. For this. I leaned in, not for a kiss, Not for heat, but just to be closer. Just to feel her breath on my cheek. Just to feel not alone in that moment. I could smell the tea between us. I could hear the clock ticking. I remember whispering, "I don't know what this is." She smiled just barely and said, "Me neither." And maybe that was the most honest thing either of us had said in years. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a betrayal. It was a recognition of something beyond name, of resonance, of home. I closed my eyes, not to hide, but to feel deeper. And I asked myself the question that would never let me go. What if love isn't about roles but resonance? What if it's not about names or rules or who came first? What if it's about who hears you cry without a sound and shows up anyway? What if she was the only one who made me feel whole? And what if wholeness was worth everything I thought I'd lose? It had been 3 days. I'd gone away, just a work thing. A conference in some beige hotel hours from home. I sat through panels, smiled through conversations, pretended to be present. But I wasn't. I kept thinking about the couch. The tea. Her question. My answer. The air between us, thick and trembling like a held breath. When I walked through the front door, the house felt different. Still. Dim. Almost sacred. At first I thought no one was home. But then I saw it. The hallway light was off, but the faint flicker of something warm pulsed from beneath my bedroom door. I stepped quietly, each footfall slower than the last. The door was slightly open, and when I pushed it I forgot how to breathe. The room. She had changed everything. Not dramatically, not loud, but with care. The bedsheets were no longer the rough cotton blend. He liked those crisp, forgettable ones we'd ordered in bulk when we moved in. No, these were silk. Deep plum. Wrinkled slightly, like someone had already laid across them and waited. Candles. Everywhere. Not the synthetic ones that smell like cupcake batter and chemicals. These were rich. Soft. Smoky and floral, like rosewater after rain. And her perfume. Not sprayed, but present. Like she'd slept on the pillow and her breath had seeped into the fibers. I just stood there. Silent. Like I'd walked into a dream I didn't know I'd been having. Then I heard it. Her voice. I didn't mean to intrude. I turned. She stood in the doorway. Bare feet. Soft shirt that clung to her just enough. Hair loose around her shoulders like she'd stopped trying to keep it tame. She smiled, almost shyly. I wanted to create a space where you could just be, she said. No expectations. No masks. Just us. The way she said us. It didn't feel like a seduction. It felt like a truth. Like something that had already happened, and we were just finally catching up to it. She moved closer. Slow. Grounded. Her hands stayed at her sides. She didn't reach for me. She didn't grab. She just came near. And that nearness. It undid me. Because I knew what it meant. She wasn't asking me to cross the line. She already had. Her eyes told me. They said everything her mouth didn't. I've already stepped into this. All I need is for you to meet me here. No pressure. No rush. Just the kind of stillness that wraps around your ribs and waits. And I did. I stepped in. Not out of impulse. Not out of rebellion. But out of recognition. Because every cell in my body whispered the same thing. This is where you're meant to be. I didn't think about consequences. About roles. About labels. I just thought about how it felt to stand in a room that had been made for me. Not for the wife. Not for the mother. Not for the woman who kept it together. But me. The me no one else ever really reached. And she had. Without trying. Without taking. Just being. She reached for my face slow, as if she was afraid I'd flinch. But I didn't. Her palm cupped my cheek and I leaned in like I'd been waiting years for this touch. Not for the hunger, but for the home. And in that moment, everything in me stopped reaching. Because she wasn't pulling me. She wasn't persuading. She was just there. Like the answer to a question I didn't know how to ask. And I knew. We weren't the same after that night. we wouldn't be. Not because we broke something, but because we found something. Something so quiet, so sacred, so impossible to explain, and yet so real. I could feel it blooming in my bones. She didn't speak. Not at first. She just reached. Soft fingers brushed the side of my face like I was made of something fragile. And maybe I was. That night, I didn't need fireworks. I didn't need intensity or declarations. I needed gentleness. I needed to feel like I wouldn't be dropped if I unraveled. Her thumb traced the inside of my wrist. Once, twice, like she was learning the pattern of my pulse. She leaned in and kissed the place behind my ear, not out of hunger, but reverence. Not claiming, just being with me. You don't have to be strong here, she whispered. And I didn't realize until that moment how much weight I'd been carrying. How long I'd been performing stillness. Her forehead rested against mine, and all I could feel was the steady rhythm of her breath, calm, like the ocean before sunrise. Safe. Unrushed. She wrapped her arms around me and didn't move. Just held. No agenda. No asking. No pushing. And it was that stillness that undid me. The way she gave me room to just exist. Not as a wife. Not as a caretaker. Not as someone filling a role. Just me. Breathing. Breaking. Becoming. When she helped me out of my sweater, it wasn't seduction. It was worship. Her hands moved like they were tracing scripture. Like every inch of me held something sacred she'd been aching to read. She didn't rush. She didn't stare. She looked at me the way someone looks at a memory they never want to lose. Her fingers paused on my collarbone, and I swear, I felt her ask permission without words. And I nodded. Because yes, I wanted to be seen. Not as a figure in someone's life. Not as a role to be filled. But as something raw and real beneath all the armor I wore. Let me see the part of you no one else ever reached, she whispered. And I let her. Layer by layer. Fear peeling back into trust. Her mouth followed the trail of my breath down my shoulder, across my ribs. And with every touch, I felt another version of myself dissolve. The version that smiled politely. That swallowed words. That flinched when someone touched her too quickly, too expectantly. With her, there was no rush. No pressure. Only presence. Only this moment. Only us. She looked at me like she'd made a decision. One that had nothing to do with control. And everything to do with devotion. Her fingers tilted my chin up, gently but firmly. And I met her eyes. She didn't blink. Didn't waver. You've spent your whole life leading, she said softly. Let me take you somewhere now. And I did. I let go. For the first time. I wasn't orchestrating. I wasn't guiding, fixing, managing the emotional weather of a room. I was being held. Seen. She moved with clarity. Her hands knew where to land and when to linger. And I didn't question. Because with her, I didn't have to know. I just had to feel. Every gesture was slow, deliberate. Like she'd dreamed of this 100 times, but waited for me to catch up. And I had. I was here. I wasn't resisting anymore. My thoughts started to split. Not in fear. In ache. One part of me was entirely in this moment in her hands, her breath, the steady weight of her against me. But another part drifted. To him. To the way he used to touch me like he was ticking off boxes. Like desire was a routine. Like intimacy was a job we completed every few weeks, then moved on. He never noticed the way I flinched when his fingers grazed too fast. Or the way my breath stopped when he skipped past me in the hallway. But she did. She read those silences like sentences. She saw me where I didn't even know I was hiding. Her hands slid into my hair, and I melted. Not because it was perfect, but because it was felt. And, for the first time, I wasn't betraying anything. I was returning to myself. It's hard to describe what happened next. Because it stopped being about touch, about bodies, about right or wrong. I wasn't with her. I was in her. Not physically. Spiritually. Inside her rhythm. Inside the quiet way she breathed into my mouth. Inside the warmth of her skin pressed against mine, not as invitation, but as sanctuary. Time fell away. The past, the guilt, the stories I'd told myself about what love was supposed to look like. They all faded. All that was left was this breathless now. Her silence wrapped around me like prayer. Her hands constant, steady guided me deeper into myself. And, for the first time, I wasn't trying to be anything. I just was. Held. Known. Unraveled. Rewritten. And I think that's what intimacy really is. Not friction. Not climax. Not conquest. But immersion. The kind that makes you forget who you were. And remember who you are. I didn't even notice the moment it crested. There wasn't a beginning or an end. It was just happening. Rising from somewhere far below my skin. A slow ache. Then a shattering. Not pain. Not fear. Just release. Like something long buried had finally clawed its way to the surface. I couldn't hold it. I didn't want to. I let go. It felt like being struck by light. Not the blinding kind, but the kind that warms the deepest part of you thought had gone cold. And then, like a dam giving way inside my chest. A flood. Soft. Endless. Not drowning. Cleansing. My body shook. Not from pleasure. From memory. From shedding. Tears slipped down my cheeks. Hot. Grateful. Unstoppable. And she didn't flinch. She just held me. Not tight. Not with fear. With knowing. Like she'd waited a lifetime to witness this version of me. The undone one. The raw one. The one who wasn't performing, wasn't striving. Just feeling. She didn't ask why I was crying. She already knew. Because it wasn't sadness. It wasn't shame. It was return. To something I didn't even know I'd left behind. To the girl in me who used to dream without checking the rules. To the woman who once believed she could be wanted not for what she gave, but for what she was. Whole. Messy. Unfixed. She ran her fingers through my hair. Slow, steady, grounding. And I let myself fall. Not into her arms. Into the truth. That this wasn't wrong. This wasn't betrayal. This was becoming. This was the echo of every moment I'd looked in the mirror. And wondered if I was too much. Too quiet. Too strange. Too distant. Too needy. And here she was. Holding all of it. All of me. She didn't say a word. Didn't try to fix or explain. She just stayed. Present. Still. Unmoving. And in that stillness, I came apart. Then came back together. New. Softer. Wider. Wilder. And I knew, in the deepest part of me, that she hadn't taken anything. She hadn't crossed a line to steal. She'd reached across a lifetime of silence. To give me back to myself. He knew. I walked through the door. And before I even said a word, he knew. Not the details. Not the shape of what happened. But something in me had shifted. The way I carried my body. Not curled inwards anymore. The way I breathed. Steadier, slower, like I wasn't waiting for something. He looked up from the couch. His book resting on his chest. And for a second, just a flicker. His face broke. Not with anger. Not suspicion. But confusion. Like he was staring at a painting he used to know. And someone had changed the colors. I said, "Hey." Soft. Normal. As if I hadn't just become a different person in someone else's arms. He smiled. Small. Wary. And said, "Hey." That night, he reached for me. Not in the way he used to. Not to claim. Or confirm. Or soothe his doubt. He just held me. His hand on my hip. My back against his chest. His breath behind my ear. But I felt the difference. His fingers searching for something familiar. And not finding it. He didn't ask. Didn't speak. Didn't press. But he watched. All night. Even when my eyes were closed. I could feel his searching. And I didn't lie. Didn't confess. Because there was nothing left to hide, and nothing I could explain. I wasn't the woman he married anymore. Not because of her hands, or her lips, or the silk sheet she'd laid out for me, but because I had stopped reaching. I had stopped begging for something unnamed, stopped performing softness, hoping to earn affection. I was whole, and it terrified both of us. He didn't know what to do with me. This version of me. Quiet. Centered. No longer bending to be chosen. He kissed my shoulder that night. Not as a lover, but as someone mourning an old home. And I let him. I let him grieve. Because I was grieving too. Not for the love we had lost, but for how long I stayed, when I didn't even feel seen. Sometimes I lie awake. Not because I'm restless, but because I'm finally still, and in that stillness, I ask myself, did I break something? Or did I finally stop pretending nothing was broken? Because here's the truth. She didn't chase me. She didn't seduce me. She saw me in a way no one else ever had. Not as a role. Not as a duty. Not as wife, or good girl, or the one who holds it all together. She saw me. The ache behind my eyes. The softness I kept locked behind manners. The wild I buried beneath quiet. And she didn't run from it. She moved closer. She said, "You can rest here." And I did. I rested like I hadn't in years. In her gaze. In her touch. In her truth. So now I wonder, if the only person who ever made you feel safe broke the rules to do it, would you walk away? If your heart had been starving, and someone finally fed it, with gentleness, with heat, with understanding, does it matter what name they had? Is it betrayal? If it was the only thing that ever made you feel loved? I'm not asking for permission, or forgiveness, or even agreement. I'm just asking, what would you do? Would you leave the only place you've ever felt whole, just to preserve a title that never really saw you? Or would you stay in the arms that finally made you feel like enough? Tell me. I want to know. Truly. This has been Olivia Touching Tales. If this stirred something in you, if it cracked open a part you forgot was there, stay. There's more coming. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself in the next story too.